So process plans. These are sets of documents that detail the manufacturing and service delivery specs. And you'd be amazed at how many of these are in the world in things you wouldn't even expect. Assembly charts, operations sheets, quality control check sheets. They go by many names, but they are essentially plans for some process, whether it's to make a product, provide a service, or do some double checking, quality checking, whatever. I mentioned places you might not even think of. This is an assembly chart for a Big Mac from Big Mac University or McDonald's University. There is a McDonald's University to train people how to do things right. You assemble things in a very specific order, and you're trained to go through this mass production process to do it always the same. And the idea is, if you're really following a proper assembly chart, it doesn't matter who's making the Big Mac, they're all the same. Is that true in the real world? Not really. There's variations in how people grab how much onions or whatever. There's always some variation in, everything from how much ketchup to how big a chunk of lettuce you're grabbing or something. But as much as possible, the goal for a business like McDonald's is to make them as consistent as possible. So if I get a Big Mac in Salinas or a Big Mac in Philadelphia, they're basically the same Big Mac. Very little difference from one to the next. What about the operations chart or sheet for the crevice tool? This is a vacuum crevice tool. Hopefully you've seen these when you've cleaned your house. You grab this, you put it on the end of the vacuum hose and suck the dirt out of the crevices. And so there are operations, descriptions of the operations. You pour in your plastic bits, you insert the mold, you check the settings and start the machine, you collect the parts, etc. There are departments responsible for each of these. Department 41, 51, and 42 are responsible for each of these different steps. There's a specific machine or tool that's required for each of these steps and a time for each of these steps. This tells you how to make the tool, period. If you want tools to be of similar quality, no defects, the plastic was molded properly, it was removed from the mold without any damage or warping, you follow the steps. And you train people to follow the steps of your process. Process analysis, they're flow charts. Flow charts are symbolic representations of the processes. These flow charts incorporate non-productive activities, things like inspection, transportation, delay, storage, things that aren't bringing direct value to your customer, and productive activities or operations that are actually bringing value to the product. So operations, inspection, transportation, delay, and storage, they each have standardized symbols on a flow chart. I've been with companies that recognize and respect these standardized flow chart symbols, and I've been with operations where they use any shape they want, and nobody has a clue about there is a standardization of flow chart symbols that you should use. It helps people understand different aspects and visually interpret the flow chart. And they can be done in different ways. Maybe you've never seen one like this, where you've got a flow chart card. This is a little older style, and these flow chart cards could be standardized for printing, and then you just either type up or hand complete the flow of the applesauce production process at Graves Mountain location facility. So you unload apples from the truck. You move to the inspection station. That's a transportation step. You weigh, inspect, and sort. So you're double checking the apples. You're looking at a quality control step. You move to storage, more transportation, wait until needed. So this is a storage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now there's no delays built into this process. You don't want delays. Sometimes with some processes, there's no way to avoid certain delays. Now waiting is different than a delay. And I don't care about the details there, but waiting, storage is not the same as a delay. But again, you've got time and distance. If it's transporting, you've got a distance. If it's an operation or a storage, you have some sort of time. Here's another one. This is a process map of a restaurant. And well-run restaurants, they got it down. And I've seen a decline in the quality of training of the wait staff in some restaurants. They don't train their employees properly to pay attention and to follow a process and think about a process. It's basically just get the orders, check their water occasionally or their coffee occasionally, and bring them out their food. And not really understanding how the whole process goes. A higher end restaurant, something like the Sardine Factory in Monterey, Whaling Station, they got it down. You drop a fork and there's somebody there to catch it before it hits the floor. Okay, not quite that good, but they've got it down. They know what they're doing. They're following the steps. They're paying attention. They are highly trained, highly systematic, and customer-oriented servers. Other times, they're not paying attention as much, and it really helps to train your employees so that they keep the process moving. They keep the customer with something. They get their drink, they get their salad, they get their dinner. They have something constantly seeming like they're the only customer there because the wait person keeps coming by and checking on them. And if you're doing a good flow, if you're doing a good process, you can have a bunch of customers thinking that you're looking out for their needs, as opposed to you're putting out fires all the time and you get around to people as you can, and they're waiting too long. They don't have that drink to get started. You know, as long as things come rolling out periodically, you change the experience of that customer. Now, it can be a problem with training and it can be a problem with just staffing. You don't have enough people in certain situations to allow the restaurant to provide the service that's really necessary. But again, you can go through this. I think this is a really good chart explaining how the process goes. Another service chart for a lending operation. And you can follow this from the loan application coming in and follow the flow chart around what happens at each of these steps. And it looks more complicated, but if you just read each of these and follow each of these steps, this lending flow chart makes a lot of sense. And I think some lenders do a really good job of having a process, having the kinds of follow through, and making sure that there is always somebody checking off each of these. And any of the client accounts, they keep them moving forward. Process innovation. Innovation is when there is something that is changing in the process. And there can be incremental, small step and breakthrough. And so there's always continuous improvement that should be going on. You should always be looking for newer, better ways, refining efficiencies, and always getting a little better And if you look back every 6 months, every 3 months, whatever, and you're looking at your process, you should always be a little better than you were the last time you looked. And occasionally there's a breakthrough, a whole new type of machine, a whole new type of process, a whole new way of doing things, and it changes everything. And I'm going to take another break and we'll get to capacity decisions when I come back.